This is the Digital Music Trends coverage of Medium 2014, an interview with Charles Caldas, CEO at Merlin.
DMT's coverage is brought to you by CI, the leading provider of digital delivery services to the independent community on ci-info.com.
So hi Charles, and thanks for joining me today. How's it going?
I'm very well. How are you?
Great, thank you. And how are you finding Medium this year?
Exhausting,
Yeah.
but productive and interesting and thought-provoking and exciting and all the things it usually is.
That's fantastic. And so let's talk about Merlin. Of course, I would imagine 99.9% of the people that watch this show will know what Merlin is. But just in case, let's just give a quick introduction about what you do.
So Merlin's the global rights agency representing the independent label sector in licensing digital networks, digital platforms. And what we really do is bring the largest basket of rights outside the major labels, which currently consists of about 600 companies and 20,000 labels, and we facilitate the licensing of their music onto digital platforms, and conversely make it easier for the digital platforms to get to the world's independence in one deal.
And so Merlin has had great success in the last few years, consolidating and representing the independent sector worldwide, especially when it comes to negotiating with streaming services. And so, and in a way, maybe that has also helped the independents achieve the great success that we had on those platforms, claiming such a huge percentage of streams compared to the overall market share, really.
Yeah. Look, I think, from a Merlin perspective, I would hope that we've certainly facilitated a lot of success for independents, that we've opened the opportunity for them to perform on these platforms. The one thing that's become clear to us is the more digital the market gets, the better it is for independents. The old world music market was dictated by financial power. So the labels that had the most ability to purchase retail space and to purchase advertising and to purchase marketing programs would always get to the front of the line.
Yeah.
I think the great thing that streaming platforms have created is a much more open platform by which people can get to music. And if you can combine those vast platforms with the bundling of those platforms into Facebook, the ability to share and discover music in a much more direct way has certainly contributed to the success of independence. We saw a survey in the UK this year where the official charts company looked at the performance of independents in the charts over the last 10 years. And the last 3 years have been 3 of the most successful years ever for independents in the UK charts. And I think there's a number of dynamics at play here. It's the digital market's been good for independents. The fact that there's less of these shop windows to walk through for consumers mean you can discover more broadly and you can consume more broadly in a much more simple way. But it's also an investment thing, I think. The major labels have been consolidating. The physical business is tough. The majors are shrinking, but the independents are growing. Major labels have in a lot of cases stopped investing in domestic repertoire that's not sung in English. Independents are filling that space. So if you look at markets like Spain and Italy, independent labels are really starting to drive the growth in the market.
Absolutely. And let's talk about the international markets as well, because that's an area that I'm really interested in. And if we look at the worldwide picture, where are you seeing the most activity when it comes to Merlin? Are you seeing territories that maybe have emerged over the last couple of years that you wouldn't have expected beforehand?
Yeah, well, I think the big surprise for everybody is obviously the Nordic territories in the wake of the Spotify launch, and the levels of adoption of streaming in those markets is extraordinary. We have to remember those markets also never really had they never had a dominant download culture, so they've kind of gone from physical to piracy to streaming. So there's, and we certainly see these different dynamics play out culturally and depending on the consumption mode in different markets.
Yeah.
I think the interesting thing for me is both the way that we're seeing individual markets develop, and and the growth is pretty consistent in terms of where these streaming platforms are actually available locally. The dynamic I'm really interested in at the moment is the fact that in some ways the global marketplace for locally produced music seems to be becoming more of a reality. So we had a meeting, for example, this morning with an Italian label we represent. In the streaming platforms, their number one revenue source is the USA. even though they're working in Italy with Italian repertoire, and I think that's a dance music thing. It's about the fact that, that whole EDM thing's taking off in America. that the web facilitates discovery of that music from wherever it is really interesting. And I think that so we're not only unbundling traditional retail, but we're unbundling or unwinding all of those territorial boundaries in terms of where music's consumed, which is really exciting.
Yeah. And you provide a whole suite of services as well. I mean, you've just launched a new dashboard on Merlin. So what is that all about, and how does that help your members?
Well, I think one of the responsibilities we feel for the labels we represent is to help them understand the changing market dynamics.
Yeah.
So there's always been a pattern that we've seen. For example, when a streaming service comes into a market, there's a lot of fear and apprehension about, is it going to kill the physical market? Is it going to kill downloads? The sky's falling down. We don't know what it is. But we're now, having done this over several territories and several services, there's almost a pattern that emerges in terms of what happens when a new market opens up to streaming. What are the adoption patterns? What are the signs that we look for in terms of growth? So the dashboard is in part so we can start sharing some of that information with our members. And in part, it's just about the fact that you have to be really fast in the digital market. So reporting and payment and flowing through the information of what's actually happening on the platforms really quickly requires efficiency. So for us, it's a tool. It's sort of a business tool that's been built really to maximize the efficiency of the way we interact with our members. But I think underneath that, it's also hopefully going to be a tool by which they can better understand how the market evolves, what the measures are, and what they can learn from one market to another.
Sure. And of course, having Merlin as a partner is something that many digital music services are seeking today, especially the ones that are coming out as new services. So how do you vet new services that are coming into the market? How do you decide who to partner with and who to present to your members as a potential opt-in?
Yeah, so look, I mean, Merlin's key responsibility is to get the efficiencies that we bring, and the global efficiencies in particular that we bring to our digital music partners, reflected in the deals that we sign. For a long time, there was a value gap between the major label deals and independent deals, in part because of this perception that independent music was somehow inferior, and we've just talked about all the reasons that's no one can say that anymore. I think the other part of the devaluation was due to fragmentation and to operational difficulties. Right. So for a service trying to launch in 20 or 25 territories, you had to do hundreds and hundreds of deals, which from a biz dev point of view was incredibly slow. Yeah. But the things we look for is to find partners that understand the value of what we do, understand the importance of putting that music in front of their consumers, understand its importance to the success of its service, and are willing to do a commercial deal that reflects that. And, I did an annual meeting here with our members yesterday, and the overriding dynamic and the theme of the talk was, opportunity and challenge coming hand in hand. So the example I used, at the beginning of this year, we were, really pleased and excited that Fast Company voted us, one of the 10 most innovative music companies in the world. So there was clearly in that very Silicon Valley environment an understanding of the value we were bringing. On the other hand, we were criticizing MySpace in the press for launching a service without independent music, and they were being pretty openly disrespectful to independence in the press. So there's this dynamic that for every victory there's another challenge. But the thing that we say to everyone is, I think if you look at the really successful music services, if you look at how Spotify is performing, if you look at the growth of Google Play, if you look at the services we've done really successful deals with that have brought us into the center of their business, that relationship is an integral part of their success. And that's really what we're looking to deliver to the members. Being in business with people who want to be in business with you and are going to help you grow your business, and don't have this misperception that somehow because you're not in one of the 3 big major labels that you should be accepting inferior or different rates. I think the time for that is past.
Essentially, and one of the elephants of the room, well, it wasn't really an elephant in the room because it was actually spoken about quite a lot this week, was talking about Google and the music industry's relationship with that company. There were really varied points of view about this, and also YouTube is sort of a fragmented market because a lot of independent labels have their own SCM channels or they join different MCNs. And so what is your relationship with Google as Merlin?
Look, we have a deal with YouTube, a current existing deal with YouTube. We have a global deal with Google Play. I'd like to think we're a valuable partner to that business. But I think Google is such a huge enterprise. I mean, it's such a huge corporation. It has so many strands and so many pies. It's really challenging to work out how, within a company like that and within what it's doing, you can preserve the value of what you do and preserve the value of the overall market. So, I don't think we should be paranoid about Google, but I do think that there's a collective responsibility from both sides of that fence to make sure that we evolve the market in a way that adds value to it. Because we're now in a phase of the music industry where we're finally seeing the downturn turn around, and we're seeing territories report increases in revenue. Google's incredibly powerful. It's got an incredible reach, but it's had a fairly mixed reputation as far as the way it treats copyright. So it's a very complex question, and one that I really hope that we find a sustainable long-term solution for.
Sure. And of course, you were talking about how Merlin as a tech-forward company and a tech-savvy company. So as all companies of this kind that almost work like a startup, you have to always innovate and you have to always find new ways to bring values to your members. So what is it that you'd like to achieve over the next year or two that perhaps you haven't quite managed to do yet, or that you're working on really hard?
Look, I think the first phase of the organisation was really about getting us into business with those key players as they came to market. The interesting thing for me about the evolution of the digital market is it's almost the polar opposite of the evolution of the physical market, which went from thousands of mom and pop and independent stores to mega stores. In the digital market, we've started with the mega stores, and we're now seeing the specialisation start to happen. So I'm really interested in seeing how territories develop, where the local services servicing local populations can gain any traction, or whether that's more a dynamic of the global services localizing. We've done a couple of deals in the last year that I find interesting. One was with a service called Pulse Locker, which is a dance music-based subscription service. So taking the Spotify model but putting it into a genre-specific or in a subcultural context. We've done deals with a service in Russia called Zvuk, because I think, in a market like that people perceive as being of, ultimately almost zero net value to the industry, we want to see how that evolves. So it's a combination of territorial spread and working out how the dynamic that's emerging in the major music markets spreads to the smaller music markets, but it's also the evolution of different models within these infrastructures. The app environment is another really interesting area where I think the apps that sit off the back of the existing music platforms can almost be specialization engines within those platforms. So I think it's a very dynamic, interesting time for all of those reasons.
Absolutely. Well, it was a real pleasure talking to you, and definitely go and check out Merlin's website. I'm going to put the link in the show notes, and you can find out all about what they do. Thanks so much, Charles.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for watching the DMT coverage of Medium 2014. You can find out more on digitalmusictrends.com or youtube.com/digitalmusictrends.